Hey, I'm Rhiannon and this is Travel Talking, the Travel Talk podcast. Travel Talk is the app that helps you connect with fellow travellers wherever you are in the world. We are the voice of real travellers discovering the world one country at a time, with a few guests joining us and an entire planet to cover.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Travel Talking. Got Jo here with Rhiannon. Rhiannon, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. So I'm very excited because today we're talking about travel and wellness and the amazing role that travel can play in your mental health and your overall well-being. So whether you're, getting out of the city to recharge your batteries for the weekend, or if you're going away for like 6 months to find yourself and, meet gurus and have a whole experience, it can just be incredible for switching up your life and making you feel better about everything.
And why is that? Why do you think travel is so good for healing, actually?
Well, I think it's partly to do with being in a completely different environment, right? So there's something about having to be in the present moment when you're in an environment that is unfamiliar. So you have to pay attention to what's happening in that present moment because you don't have a choice, because otherwise you're going to walk in front of a bus or something. So you have to kind of stay present so that you can make your way around.
Yeah, I think I've always felt that there's no judgment in a new place. When I arrive to a new city where I potentially don't know anyone at all, I feel like I can be entirely myself in a way that sometimes is harder to do at home because, we find ourselves in a routine. We know who we have to be at work. We often have friends, partners, etc., that have known us for such a long time. And one of the most refreshing things I find about travel is stepping off a plane or a boat or a bus and being in an entirely new environment and kind of getting to dictate what side of myself I'm presenting.
Yeah, you can be a completely new person. You can, try out anything that you've always thought you wanted to be. You can give it a go and, talk to new people and they have no idea who you were before you left home.
Exactly. And I think that's that confidence building thing that sometimes, like you said, you're trying new things and we're a bit shy sometimes to do that around people that have already known us. They're like, hold on, you don't do that. And it's, I'm a big believer in changing up day-to-day life, whether you're traveling or not, and trying new things. But of course, it is sometimes hard when people have known you a certain way. They just see you as a certain way. So I think traveling is an opportunity to put yourself in front of different nationalities as well and hear different perspectives on your own life. And that in turn, I think, unlocks something in the mind that helps you heal to some degree, right?
Yeah, I think loads of people go away somewhere and find that they connect so much better with people in a different country because they're just on such a more similar wavelength than they are. And there's something about like connecting with different cultures that you can really expand your horizons.
And I mean, we're all living pretty busy lives, but when do you think the right time is to start that travel?
Yeah, we've actually got 2 guests joining us today who are going to talk about long trips that they did after finishing a job. But I think it's really important to remember something that my boss used to say to me at my old job, which was he said, make sure you're not just taking random days off here and there and that you are taking like a clear week or even a clear 2 weeks, because it's so important for your mental health to get away from work, ideally to get out of the city, out of your country, out of your continent. So I think it's like you may think, well, I can't go on a trip and improve my mental health because I can't go away for 6 months, but it doesn't have to be that. It just has to be enough time that you really get out of that headspace that you're stuck in.
No, I totally agree. I think travel can really help you when you've found yourself in a position in life that you weren't quite expecting. We all know that after a breakup, the healthiest thing to do really can be to go traveling. I certainly know in my experience, I was with someone for 8 years and suddenly that ended and I didn't quite know what to do. And to be perfectly honest, I was a huge traveler and had traveled quite a lot with my partner. However, I found myself, at the age of 33, suddenly alone. And the fear had kind of crept in, actually. I suppose all the travels that I'd done previously, I suddenly thought, can I still do this? And it took going to the Balkans and just really randomly wandering around for 6 weeks with a 40-litre backpack. I went through, Kosovo, Bulgaria, Albania, places that I had never quite frankly expected myself to go. And I can tell you 6 weeks later, I was no longer thinking about that breakup.
Yeah, exactly. It probably would have taken a lot longer if you just stayed in London or Australia or wherever you were at the time.
That's true. I think traveling can also help you confront issues a lot faster and maybe move through them. And in fact, that is what we're talking to our guests about today.
Yeah, exactly. So Rhiannon's going to talk to our first guest, Gabby, who is one of our contributors who found herself made redundant after 12 years at a job and decided to turn lemons into lemonade by going on a trip. So that's coming up next.
So we've got Gabby with us. Welcome to the show, Gabby.
Hi, Rhiannon.
You've been doing a fair bit of travel in the last 2 years, right? Where have you been?
Yeah, so I think Australia, India, Malaysia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Mexico, and Nepal.
Wow, that's quite a lot. Tell me, did you think that you would be going to all those places maybe 4 years ago?
Absolutely not. No, I was a scheduled fly, which, I thought I could just never do anything myself. I was in relationships always, a long-term partners, and I always thought I would never be able to go away on my own. And then the breakup happened, and then I was like, you know what, screw that, I'm gonna go. And I went to Sri Lanka, and it was amazing. And I think from that time, it's just like I was enjoying it so much and booking holidays after holidays and just going away and building my confidence up. And it was great.
So it was a process for you over time where, obviously we introduced the show and mentioned that you had been working, you were pretty happy in London. You had a good job. As you said, you had a partner, and suddenly life changed a bit abruptly, right?
Yeah, it was after 12 years I was made redundant. I think it was the right time, but also, you just feel all of a sudden it's like, what is my purpose? I totally lost it. It's like, wow, I was needed for 12 years and now what am I actually doing? So after that, I just decided maybe going away and push myself and get out of my comfort zone a little bit would do. So I decided to go to Nepal.
Okay. And so you talk about getting out of your comfort zone. How did you feel? So, a bit afraid of traveling. You'd obviously had a comfortable life, enjoyed just your life in London, and suddenly thrust yourself out there. What was the first thing that you felt when you arrived in a new place?
So for me, also safety is quite important as a female solo traveler. So when I arrived in Nepal, it was actually the country that I didn't feel nervous at all. I was just like, okay, I'm here now, just waiting for my backpack because I had all my stuff for the tracking there. So I was like, I'm sure it's going to arrive. I'm sure it's going to arrive. But I didn't feel internally nervous, like something's going to happen to me or someone's going to do something to me, or someone's going to steal something from me. It just wasn't there.
And did that surprise you?
It did. It really, really did. But maybe, I don't know why it was, but it was just this internal feeling telling me that, this is the right time and this is the right place to do something like that, I guess.
So we're talking about Nepal. You arrived there and, as we said, it's a different environment. What do you think you got the most out of Nepal, and how long did you spend there?
I think it was over 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks altogether. And what did I got out of it? It's definitely more confidence for sure. Great friends. It brought me back to basics. As I said, London life is very comfortable, isn't it? But, you get to Nepal and you see children who are basically really happy to walk for 2 days and then take a bus for 8 hours. So just so that they could get to school. And you're thinking, oh my God, like my life is actually awesome. And look at these little human beings just wanted to get an education, and this is what they are doing. So I think, just definitely brought me back to basics and like what is important in life.
That's true. Traveling can also be a humbling experience. And I certainly found when I'd go to countries that I suppose as a Western nation you perceive to be developing and somewhat underprivileged, to kind of go there and see people with such happy, smiling faces. They are so content with what they have. They love their family. They love their friends. And I think what I learned from that, certainly after spending 6 months living in India, is I came home with a great level of appreciation for certainly what I had, but also thinking, contentness is not about what you have. It's about how you feel inside. And ultimately, I think we are a product of our environment and the people we have around us. And the beautiful thing about travel is that you are reflecting a moment in time, and the people around you are really what make that travel special. And I suppose, how do you feel about that? You said you met people in Nepal. Were they instrumental in also helping you on that mindful journey when it came to traveling?
Absolutely. I think everyone I met on my journey were kind of going there for some sort of purpose. maybe to find a purpose. That's maybe what it was. You know, there was a American couple, which I'm still really good friends with. You know, they were just about to retire, thinking like, oh, what are we going to do when we actually retire? There was a guy who also did his job and just like, well, what do I want to do in life? And I think because I was in the same boat as all of them, I think that that's how great connections actually happen.
You got comfort out of the fact that, you know, you weren't the only person questioning, what am I going to do with my life? In fact, there's a whole bunch of other people out there doing a similar thing.
Absolutely.
Is that fair to say?
Exactly like that. So even though I traveled alone, I didn't feel alone for a second. It was great.
Okay, and the Gabby you were before you went traveling and the Gabby you are after, I mean, what do you feel is the biggest difference?
There is always struggles. I'm not going to say no. But I think staying true to myself, recognizing situations and people I don't want to be in or I don't want to be around, actually learning to say no a little bit more and just looking after myself and, you know, and just my own well-being, because I know that's important. Like if you don't love yourself, you know, how can someone else love you? We all heard it for so many times, but it is very true.
So powerful. And certainly when you're out on the road alone, that point is very true. If you don't love yourself, how can you expect all these strangers in a country that you've never been to before to jump in and help you if you're not standing there saying, I'm worth it and I deserve it? So it sounds like traveling for you was exactly what you needed at this period of time, and you're back in London right now and recharged. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Yeah. Recharged. It's always nice to get out of London though, isn't it? Even if it's just for a little hike to Box Hill, you know, just in a countryside and just get out of the big city because it can swallow you sometimes. But yes, I'm definitely recharged, feeling better and healed, I guess.
Well, thanks for writing the article on Nepal. If you check out on traveltalk.co, you can read Gabby's experience in Nepal. And thanks so much for joining us on the show and sharing your journey.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you, guys.
Travel Talk, your travel buddy to meet new travel buddies. Search for Travel Talk on the App Store.
So, Rhiannon, when are you going to make me redundant so I can go travelling in Nepal?
Got me there. I want to go traveling. I mean, it is the bitter irony. I've said it before. You start a travel app and guess what? You don't get to travel. But I think, yeah, we've all realized how important it is to take those breaks. You know, if you are feeling overworked, I think the best thing you can do is take a holiday, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm planning to go to the Peak District for a few days and just do some walking and writing and go offline a little bit in July if I can.
And I think the weather, I mean, it goes with that. We're in London. It's been raining for like 3 days straight here. And it certainly is one of those things where that in itself can be enough. I remember last year, it was just before I started Travel Talk and the snow was coming. And we all know how London stops when snow comes. And literally they said, right, no one's going to be able to move. And I thought, well, how do I deal with this? And I booked a last minute flight to Tenerife the next morning at 10 a.m. And I literally got out to Gatwick just as the snow was falling. And then I landed in Tenerife and I saw all the news back home and smiled to myself and thought, I'm so glad I did this, came to Tenerife, because why would you want to be stuck at home in the snow if you're not feeling happy in the first place?
Yeah, sounds like you got there just in time. Probably a much more pleasant place to be.
Yeah, indeed. But often we do have these negative voices that hold us back. And, you know, we're at home thinking, we can't do this, we can't do this. Has that ever sort of happened to you and, you know, you almost don't go traveling because you've got this fear in your head that you have to overcome to kind of get out there?
Yeah, I think that's why I ended up, my first solo trip, I ended up doing a Kentucky tour, right? Because I was really too scared to do it myself. I thought, you know, I think sometimes I think, oh, I just want to get away on my own and not talk to anyone. And then sometimes you do it and it's not quite as great as you imagined it would be. So it's really important to connect with people, even if you're not traveling with someone you know, to make sure that you find people to talk to and to hang out with and to make sure you have that like human contact.
That's true, because especially when you're traveling for longer periods of time, it's not fair to pretend that there aren't moments on the road where you are feeling alone and in a foreign location where you don't have your friends around.
Exactly. I think there's this kind of well-worn cliche that, you know, you quit your job or you get made redundant and you book a flight and you go away and suddenly after a month you've found yourself, you're a completely new person. Everything that used to bother you doesn't bother you anymore and everything's okay. I think that's what's really important about the piece that James wrote for us, who's our next guest, about how he'd he'd been traveling for a while when he got to climb Mount Rinjani in Indonesia, but just because he'd been out there for 3 months didn't mean that, there was no more anxiety and that he wasn't worried about anything and that, he was just having this amazing time.
Indeed, I think when you're traveling, the coping mechanisms that you develop when you are alone on the road are actually something you can bring home with you. And when you are having those moments of loneliness in your own house, in your own environment, you can actually draw on those experiences and how you stayed strong in that moment. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about James and his experience in Indonesia.
Right, so now we're back talking with James, who has written a couple of articles for us on the theme of wellness on traveltalk.co, the first of which was about his experience climbing Mount Rinjani in Indonesia. So welcome to the show, James.
Thanks, Jo. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So how did you find yourself in Indonesia in the first place?
Okay, so it's very long-winded, but the short version is I finished my job in London and then ended up doing some travel in South Africa and Botswana. And then people were saying, go to Asia. So I went to Asia and I started in Cambodia. From there up Vietnam and then to Laos. And then I flew down to Indonesia because I was recommended it and wanted to do some surfing and follow on from what I did in South Africa on the Wild Coast.
So generally you kind of started without much of a plan and were just sort of winging it.
Yeah, that's how I do most things. And I just did that in travel as well. And it has its pros and cons.
Yeah. So as you said in your article, you'd been out there for about, I think, 4.5 months when you got to Indonesia. And you said the anxiety had been biting at your heels for a while. Was the uncertainty of your travel plans part of that anxiety for you?
Yeah, definitely. It's this kind of double-edged sword of not wanting to plan because that causes anxiety, and then find yourself in a situation where it would have been really helpful if you'd planned, and then you're like, damn, I should have planned, and you become anxious more so. Yeah, and it was getting towards that time where I was thinking, I'm going to head back to London in the next couple of months. So that was at the forefront of my mind as well.
So you had that real fear of returning and not knowing what you were going to do when you got home, and the pressure of when you got back, everyone saying, so what are you going to do now? Where are you going to work? What are you going to do?
Yeah, pretty much, because I traveled on my own multiple times before, but all the other times I had a job to return to and a flat to return to. Whereas this time I was getting back without somewhere to live and without a job. Yeah, I'm not sure whether I was dreading that or whether I was dreading more so people asking me, having to actually hold myself accountable for the decisions I'd made, which led me to that point.
Yeah, sometimes we'd sort of be okay with our decisions if we didn't have to justify them to anyone else, right? Like we'd happily just do whatever, but it's other people kind of interrogating us, or that's how it feels. That's the issue.
Yeah, and that works really well when you're traveling and you've got a best friend for 4 or 5 days and then you part ways. But when they're kind of people you've had in your life for a long time, you do feel more so like you owe them a proper reason as opposed to because I feel like it.
So when you went to Mount Rinjani, am I pronouncing that correctly, by the way?
That's how I say it, so hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so. The climbing this volcanic mountain became kind of a very literal metaphor for your anxiety, right? It was like the peak of your anxiety. It was a tough climb. Just tell us a little bit about how that was for you.
Even when I started, I flew over to Kuta Lombok from Denpasar in Bali. So it's to the north of the island of Lombok. And I landed in the south. And I didn't have much time to get up there and do it. So, of course, that was making me really anxious. And I did manage to get a ride up there from my guest house owner, who then arranged the tickets and the pass up there. But then, because I was in a rush, I was very sleep deprived at the start. So even from the get-go, it was a case of, I don't feel great.
Yeah, you started out the wrong way, basically. You sort of set yourself up in already quite an anxious situation to do something that was quite physically and mentally taxing.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like if someone asks you if you want to do a 10K after lunch and it's like 11 a.m. and you've never actually practiced a 10K before. And you're like, yeah, sure, let's do that. And
if that's what everyone's doing, I guess I should do it.
Yeah. It goes as well as you'd expect.
And sometimes that kind of experience can be great, to just spontaneously go for something and just do it. But that wasn't quite the case for you.
No, it really wasn't. So even going up there, I saw some of the equipment other people had. And it wasn't like hardcore mountaineering equipment. It wasn't like something from, climbing up K2. But I didn't have gloves and I didn't really have much in the way of warm clothing. I didn't have like hiking poles or a head torch or anything, which I later found out was very, very important to have, which, it all kind of like snowballed into this thing of me thinking, why am I here? This is a terrible idea. And actually, I'm not sure if I said it in the article, but it was meant to be a 2-night, 3-day trip. And I went back on the second day because I thought, all right, done that. I know I'm meant to go and chill out in a lake at the bottom of like the crater in the middle of the volcano. I'm done. I've done what I feel I needed to do. So,
but that's frankly probably the healthiest thing that you could have done, is you noticed that you were in a situation where you were going through something that was really what you have described in the article as, you know, essentially a breakdown. You know, and reaching the peak of the mountain was an incredible achievement, but then that's what you needed. You didn't need another day or another night of uncomfortableness. You'd already kind of got what you needed from it. And it's about getting yourself back out of that situation that really wasn't doing you any favors.
Yeah, pretty much. And the kind of feeling of ease and general well-being that I had, you know, when I got back to the more civilized world in my hotel that evening, maybe I wouldn't have had that if I'd pushed myself even further and injured my ankles and feet and everything else even more. So I guess, that was the right thing to do, because I did think I feel pretty good right now. To see how long that holds out for.
Yeah, I think what was really great in the article was how you talked about how it was more about when you started to feel more anxious and to feel worse again, that you had that memory of feeling good when you got to the top of the mountain, and that knowing that you could feel that way helped you to kind of feel better in the moment. So like, what's the message that you want people to take from your article?
I guess that travel and some of these experiences can be like, you know, kind of cathartic. But also if you've got issues beforehand, it's not necessarily going to fix them, but it might give you some confidence to, you know, work towards actually fixing suggested broken, improving things is probably a better way of saying it. And basically, it's not going to make everything okay, but it's probably going to make you stronger and feel more able to actually do what you need to do to be better in your own time, I guess.
And in the same way that you know, recovery from mental health issues isn't a linear journey. I think, you know, you trying to climb up that scree was definitely not a linear journey. So I think it's a very, very apt metaphor. And I think it's a very important piece that you've written. You've also written for us a lighter piece about going on a yoga retreat when you got to Bali.
It's definitely lighter. If I go on with the same kind of intensity as the volcano piece, I don't think people would want to do yoga.
Yeah. So just give us like a quick rundown of your experience of doing yoga retreats when you're in Southeast Asia.
The first one over in Tabanan in Bali, or just near Tabanan, basically that was about a week after the volcano. So that whole experience was still like very, you know, very current in my mind. I still may have had kind of volcanic dust stained feet because that stuff does not wash out. But I thought, okay, well, I want to go and do something which is for, you know, my own well-being, that isn't kind of really strenuous. So I did some research, and so there are plenty of options of doing things around yoga in Bali. You know, Ubud's kind of like one of these kind of yoga centers of the world, but a lot of them do have more of a Western approach. And it was like, you know, 1 or 2 sessions of yoga a day, then you can do what you want with your own time. And I wanted something a bit more
intensive.
Yeah, I guess intensive. I did some research, and it was on, I think, yogaretreats.com. And I ended up finding one which had the option of doing, I think, 2 yoga sessions a day, plus some kind of cultural activities, such as making coconut oil and trying Tai Chi, doing things like going on these big swings you see that go over rice paddies and swimming in waterfalls. And I thought, okay, this sounds really good. So I decided to go over there and do that. And, you know, that back to back with the hike was actually, I think, a good combo. Yeah,
so potentially quite a kind of healing experience after such a painfully physically demanding trip that you'd done, to do something a bit more kind of relaxing and still taxing, but in a more kind of gentle way.
Yeah, pretty much. And there was things like there was a very poor Wi-Fi there, which I don't even think actually existed. And like there's no 3G signal either. And so I kind of like leaned into that and enjoyed being by myself in the evenings and chilling out. Whereas when I was hiking up Rinjani and had no signal, I felt more like I was cut off from the rest of the world and needed help. So it's kind of like similar circumstances, but it's kind of more beneficial.
Yeah, having a kind of a different mindset to it, and feeling like you're stuck with a situation instead of that you've chosen to. So yeah, your piece about yoga retreats, I mean, you wouldn't consider yourself a yogi. The whole point is for people to, if they're thinking about going on a trip that is specifically for wellness, for well-being, and they think, oh, I'd love to do a yoga retreat, but I'm no yogi and I'll be completely out of place, that you think that that's fine, that they should just do it anyway and just go along and that they'll still have a good time and that they'll still get something out of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've done a few sessions here and there before, like in the UK, and then maybe like 1 or 2 in Vietnam. And, it definitely wasn't intensive. I don't know even names of things. People are saying like, I was just trying to say one
all
of the
the
words.
Sanskrit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I resemble more of Yogi Bear than Yogi. So, yeah.
Nice.
And that wasn't planned. And basically, if I can get into it and do it, then I honestly pretty much anyone can. I just think it's really good because you're focusing on your body and your mind. So yeah, I guess with meditation, you're just in your mind, and with yoga, you're focusing on your body and staying balanced. And if you're talking about like mindfulness, that's one of the best ways to do it, like to pay attention to what you can feel and what you're thinking. And like with meditation, the whole idea is not to not think, is to acknowledge the thoughts and not engage with them.
Yeah.
And when you go back and live somewhere like London, it's really helpful to be able to not engage with all these thoughts. Even if someone's not an anxious person, it's still an anxious situation to find yourself in. So
yeah,
that's just one of the benefits.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, James. Thank you for your 2 articles. We really appreciate how honest you were in talking about these kinds of issues. It's really important for men, especially, to talk about these things. So thank you for writing those for us. And thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you.
It was great to hear James's story. And thanks so much to James and Gabby for sharing their experiences with mindful travel on the Travel Talking podcast today. That's it for this week. I hope we've inspired you on your travels or maybe given you the push to take off. In either case, don't forget to download the Travel Talk app from your app store. This has been Travel Talking and I've been Rhiannon Monks. We'll be back with more, and until then.